Hi everybody, welcome back to the Old Warlock. I'm Alex.
I'm Jim.
And today we're going to be talking about something that's not necessarily a super enthusiastic topic, but we feel pretty passionately about it.
Well, I wouldn't say we do. I think we feel more ambivalent about it. It's just kind of a type thing.
We here are very big fans of the original handbooks. I gestured to the handbooks you can't see.
And we're about to tell you of one we're not really that fond of.
Yes, and that's the Wilderness Survival Guide. So we're just going to go through it a little bit. So why don't we get started?
Ding, 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 ding.
The Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Wilderness Survival Guide by Kim Mohan was released in 1986. Mm-hmm. And, this is kind of the tail end of some of the releases of the original first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons before they started making the shift over to second. And we both own all of the manuals from the Advanced...
Just cause.
Because we like them. We don't use a lot of them. But we really think that this is probably the worst one to buy. If you're going to go out and you're going to buy a manual. This is the one that we absolutely use the least out of any of them.
In fact, I've never used anything out of that book.
No, never once. We buy it because it's part of the tradition, but that's about it. And we're going to kind of explain to you why.
And this is not to say that you might enjoy this book, but it really doesn't fit in with our style of play, and it's something that I've never found anything really of value in it.
No.
This seems to be like this is more of a book that was made to just generate some capital.
Absolutely. And, to kind of illustrate that, the book opens by giving an overview of the wilderness, in which it describes what a desert is, what a forest is, what hills are, what mountains are, plains, seacoast, swamp, all those different things. And there's a couple pages devoted to explaining what different climates are essentially. Yeah. Which is, off to a real bad start. But then from there, it just starts to give a lot of different survival rules for really specific things that have to do with you wandering around in the wilderness or your character going around in the wilderness. And you marked off here.
Well, yeah, in going off of what you're saying there, it seems to be a lot of stating the obvious. Now, this could be very valuable to someone who has never left a city, and maybe we're being overly critical because we live in the Rocky Mountain West. We spend a lot of time outdoors, in bad weather and hot weather and wet weather and snowy weather.
So we know that jackets are important.
But it's just one of those things where I don't know that a D&D manual needs to tell you that you need to wear proper clothing,
wear boots
if it's cold out.
Yeah.
So again, to me, there's an awful lot in here that is stating the obvious, but a lot of what they don't do when they state the obvious is there's not a real strong attempt at converting that into a playable rule system.
Yes. It's very much just writing about here's X, Y, and Z why this kind of clothing is important, why you need to wear coats in the winter, and there's not a whole lot of plus minus bonuses for this. And if there are bonuses or if there are specific rule sets that go,
and there are some,
they're kind of difficult to understand the way that they've been implemented into the book. There's not a super clear explanation of what these numbers mean and how you're supposed to apply them.
And I think that one of the other issues that we've had with this is that there's also an emphasis on detail that would be very cluttering to my game. I mean, one of the ones that I marked here is personal temperature. Mm-hmm. This one talks about the concept of wind chill and how much colder it will be if you're outside in the cold and the wind is blowing. Yeah, you're right. In a survival situation, wind chill is something you definitely have to take care of.
Absolutely.
But I think that that's something that could be really taken care of on the fly in any D&D campaign, and paying attention to the wind chill effect of someone as they're adventuring in a winter situation. I think that could be really onerous to try and do and keep up with, and not worth it. Not worth the storyline being being warped in such a way that you would be paying attention to that on a daily basis.
Absolutely, yeah. It would really confuse, I think, some of your players. And I mean, another thing here that I've marked off, they go into they call it special weather, which is where they discuss kind of hurricanes, tornadoes, that kind of thing. And there's a table here for tornado damage to structures, where they go through and they name different kinds of structures: light wooden, light stone, heavy stone, things like that. And then you roll the die to see how strong a tornado is, and then you use that to dictate the damage to the structure that you have put there in the path of the tornado.
But again, way too much detail.
Exactly. It seems like if you have created a tornado and you have a castle, it should be at the discretion of the DM to just say, this has taken this much damage. This tower fell over and killed 3 people or something like that. So you can apply that in the situation depending on the situation, you can apply it in a way that best fits the storyline that the characters are in, instead of completely relying on everything being random to a dice roll.
Well, and I think that I would much rather see, in a situation like this, I would much rather have known, okay, you have your medium tornado, here's how much damage it can cause within 5 minutes, and then you have hit points that are assigned to your buildings, and that's how you figure it out, rather than just if the tornado of such and such hits a light wooden building, it's destroyed on this, or it's damaged on this.
Yeah.
To me, this is not the best way to go about it.
Including damage as a rule, it's not very specific, because damage could be taken as, the
windows
some
are
of the
blown out,
shingling is screwed up,
right.
Or damage could be, the roof is ripped off entirely, so you can't, it's not super specific, but it is specific at the same time.
Right. I think it's specific, but not in the right way.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this continues with, you marked this one off here.
One of the other details, and again, I'm not faulting the person who put this together.
I think they were given a very difficult task, because I think they published, I'm not sure, but I'm assuming the Dungeoneer's Survival Guide was published first.
Could be, I don't remember.
And they needed corresponding things with the two of them, and I think that was the difficult part.
Well, and I think that there are some other things here that, as a DM, I would be wanting to figure out a system for this on my own. That would be, in my case, it would be quicker, it would be easier, and it would not, I wouldn't want to be stopping to roll dice for all of these things. So they have things like crossing a chasm on a rope. Mm-hmm. I don't want to really have to follow the rules for crossing a chasm on a rope. That's something I'm going to do as a DM based on dexterity, based on what level you are in terms of, if you're a thief, a higher level thief is going to have a better chance of doing this. That's something that I think should be left up to the DM, and I think that if you were to try and follow even half of these, you would really bog your game down to being almost unworkable.
And alongside that, I think that the idea that you could go through that you could go through this book and have your players memorize all of this,
or as a DM memorize
exactly as anybody playing the game memorize this entire book alongside everything in the player's handbook, everything in the DM's guide, everything in the monster manual, everything in Unearthed Arcana, and all the other books. That's where people get daunted with taking up the game,
right?
Is because they think that there's this requirement that you do have all of these rules completely memorized when you go into it. And finding the things that are talked about in here, that's just another instance of where you'd have to stop the game, you have to get out the book,
right.
You have to open the book, and that just disrupts the flow of the game, which is the way we play it, at least. That's not what we want to do. We want to continue the storyline moving forward and keep that storytelling going. And if there is a situation where something comes up, we can rely on the DM to make a decision in that moment.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Well, another example here real quick, they have a section here on movement on slippery horizontal surfaces. I think I can figure that one out as a DM, and as a player, really the thing that I would be most concerned about is just, how fast can I move without falling down? The DM would make the ruling on it, and you go from there.
Yeah.
I don't think that you need to have a detailed explanation of how to figure out movement on a slippery horizontal surface.
You don't have to have table 22 characters jumping ability, where you go through the level and it gives you a standing broad jump number if you roll it.
Right.
It's just, it seems a little bit unnecessary. And we apologize if we're offending any of you. This is not our intention. This is just,
By no means. It's just we're just trying to let you know that this
is not how we.
This
play
is not
the
something
game.
that we would do. We would not use this to play our style of game.
Yeah, you also marked off this one here.
There were two things on here that, again, I would not want to try and apply these particular rules. One of them is treading water, and there's a whole description in here about how often you need to make a check for someone treading water, how long they can do that per round, and then what they need to do in order to not go underwater at the end of a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. There's another one here about holding one's breath. And I get that maybe somebody needs to read through something like this to come up with at least a concept of how to make a ruling on holding one's breath, but that's something that I think most people are going to be able to figure out a concept for dealing with that on their own. Yeah,
you've got, 2 minutes. And that's, you just have to figure that out as you go, kind of. This I think is interesting. This is perhaps one of the few redeeming things.
This one was good,
in this book is it's page 47, talking about flying mounts. And it goes through different kinds of dragons, different kinds of birds and bird-like creatures, and different winged mammalian creatures, and other fantastic creatures.
This is a nice table.
These are good tables, and I think this could be useful because this is something that's maybe tougher to come up with on the fly. And basically it goes through, so you have a black dragon, it gives the normal load in gold pieces that dragon can carry. It gives the maximum load that dragon can carry. Then it has the movement rate, which is not something that we necessarily use.
Only for a comparison.
We
don't do much with movement rate unless you're being chased or you're underground.
Yeah. Then it introduces maneuverability class, which, another thing that maybe we wouldn't necessarily use, and stamina. But again, for comparison's sake, it does kind of divide these different creatures up into where they sit in relation to other flying
which is
creatures. Good. Yeah. So it's something that's somewhat usable. Same thing with, it gives a percentage chart for whether you fall or not when you're riding one of these flying creatures. Again, not necessarily something we would use, but could be useful if you're riding a dragon.
Again,
or something like that.
This is a DM rolling situation.
Yeah,
that's something that the DM is going to be figuring out on the fly. It's going to work much smoother that way.
Yeah, same kind of idea. It talks about hunting. It gives very specific rules for like percent chances of success with hunting, stalking a wounded animal. How those rules are going to work. Hunting proficiency goes to the same thing with fishing. It lists off inedible plants and the effects that they will have. These are all things we feel like we would come up with on our own.
Well, and one of the, just to give you another example here, one of the areas where they do put in a table is on fishing success. Mm-hmm. So you have your type of area. There's poor fishing there, fair fishing there, or good fishing there. Then they subdivide that into the time of day that you're actually doing your fishing. Mm-hmm. Daytime, nighttime, dawn, or dusk. Yeah, there are better times to fish. There are worse times to fish. There are good areas to fish in. There are bad areas to fish in. I don't think I need a table. I don't want to be referring to a table just because a character says, we're hungry. I'm going to go down to the stream and see if I can hook a trout.
Okay, let me whip out the Wilderness Survival Guide.
And then we'll let you know if you're successful.
Yeah. And then it's the same thing. There's a whole table for good sleep versus bad sleep.
Now, actually, I thought that was good. I know you didn't like it. I thought that was a good thing to have.
I feel like of the things in here, it's probably the most usable.
Not that I would necessarily use it.
No.
But I thought that it was something that gives you food for thought.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. It gives you specific ideas for, if you've slept less than 5 hours a day, here's what you have to do. You slept less than 1 hour a day.
And it talks about your wisdom is not as good, your wisdom is not as strong, your dexterity is not as strong, or it's better, that kind of thing.
For if you are a particularly rule-heavy type of player where you want those specific things to impact your players, that's a good way to go. And I think that that's kind of the theme of the whole book. We use the player's handbook. We use not so much the DM's guide. We still use it.
Some of it. Yeah.
But a lot of the more basic books we do use pretty heavily with the rules that we follow and things like that. And that's just kind of the way we play, with a sort of homebrew combination of AD&D, basic box set D&D, and other things.
Super streamlined.
Yeah.
Highly streamlined.
But we also recognize that there are people who follow every rule in every one of these books. And for those of you who play like that, this is something that you would need, because it does have a lot of pretty common situations that your characters might come across while they're playing, and it gives you how to get through that as a DM. But for those of you who play like we do, which is a little bit more loose, kind of the DM has a little bit more control over what's going on, and it's not quite so random.
And I would say
according to
actually
the dice.
DM has a lot more control
Yeah.
in our style of play.
Yeah, DM has all the control. They're the supreme overlord of everything that's happening. This is not necessarily something that you would need. So, I would say that if you are working to complete your collection of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons,
And you can only afford one book,
do not buy
don't
this
buy
one.
this one.
This is maybe last on the list. Yeah. This and the Dungeoneer's Survival Guide are probably last, but this one is dead last. Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, that's why I got it for $9.95 somewhere. I'm not sure where, but
Anyway,
that's really all we've got.
that's it. Just a quick look at the Advanced D&D Wilderness Survival Guide. Came out again, 1986. And it's something that we don't highly recommend. We have copies because
it's a
we're
part
collectors like
of
that.
D&D history.
But aside from that, I don't think I can recommend.
Yeah.
it. It's gonna be looking pristine 20 years from now.
Absolutely, it will. So, thanks for stopping by. Be sure to check out the links down in the description for all of our social media, our podcast, all of our Spreadshirt for if you want to get some cool clothing that we unfortunately are not currently wearing, but is still worth checking out. Go click those. Check out the homepage for the YouTube channel. It's got all the links to the podcast and the website and all kinds of other fun stuff that you can get to.
We also have the coffee page. We're still working on getting some exclusive content on the coffee page.
Yes, that should be coming soon for any of you who have been giving us money at some point or anything like that. You're not paying huge sums of money. Don't worry. It's like $2, I think.
Well, he doesn't mean that the people who've paid us are not paying huge sums of money.
We really appreciate
That's not what he's
it.
saying.
Thank you.
We appreciate you doing that, but if you were to support the coffee page, it's like $2.
Yeah, it's like $2.
But for the people who have supported us,
you'll be getting your own stuff here soon. Probably podcast episodes and things like that. We're going to start putting up specifically for the paying people on coffee.
Yeah.
Sorry. Didn't mean to offend. Sorry.
He didn't mean it.
I didn't. But thanks for stopping by. Check out those links, and we will see you next time.
I'm Jim.
I'm Alex.
Keep your sword on free.
Bye-bye.